Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about how to render this particular simple still life setup in local color. So if you're going to paint along with me, and I strongly recommend that you do, although you are absolutely free to set up your own very simple still life and execute the exact same exercise. But if you're going to paint along with me, then I would recommend that you already have a thumbnail done of this particular composition, just so you figured out where the basic shape relationships and value relationships are. Have that out at your side while you're looking at the photograph and painting. So have all three out so that you can use those, actually two, have both of those out so that you can use them as references while you work. So you can refer back to the thumbnail at will and refer to the photograph as well. So now that we're all set up, let's dive in and start mixing some color. Welcome to the studio. So today we're going to start our exploration of color with a demo of painting with local color. So we have our simple still life set up, and as you saw, it is a simple styrofoam cup in a box with a black background and a red base. We're going to approach this as simple color masses and not get caught up in all the little details. So when you're painting the cup, don't worry about the rim, don't worry about the details on the cup. It's a simple cylinder form. One of the reasons I chose it is it's very close to the kinds of shapes we see out in the landscape. So what I want you to do first is to look at that photograph. Hopefully you've already got that done in your sketchbook, and do that thumbnail study of the 5 to 7 shapes and the 3 to 5 values. Once you have that done, you're ready to go. So we're going to work with black for the background with a small touch of gray where there's a highlight in the background where the light is showing. For the cup, because it's a white cup and we're painting local color, we're going to have white for the top and a gray for the sides, because only one face of it, one side of it is towards us, and it's somewhat silhouetted by the light directly overhead and behind. Then we have the red of the board at the bottom, and we have the actual local color, the shade, which is the red mixed with black, and the tint, which is the red mixed with white. This is the approach most people take. And as you'll see, it's not going to be as intensely illuminated as it will be when we use more optical observed color. So let's dive in. So we are going to, as I said, dive right on in, and we're going to first establish where that basic shape of the cup is, and we're going to start with the darkest value there. And remember, this is not about painting objects, it's simply about painting color and light. So we're not worrying about details, and we're not going to get all caught up in drawing issues. So if you're having a little trouble with the drawing part of it, any trouble with the perspective, that sort of thing, do not let that slow you down. We simply want to get the color in right now. And as y'all have heard me say before, working with the knives can take some time to get used to. So this is not about becoming a photorealist painter in this particular demo. It's just about working out the value relationships as regards the shapes. Now, this other side of the cup, it's roughly like that, and then down, gradually working in just the basics of that shape. And let me just slow down there and wipe off. Remember to always wipe the knife off on the paper towel before you change colors. If you feel like you really just can't stand it, you just gotta finesse it a little bit. Again, remember, we're not about drawing here. Just go on and bring your little knife out, but for the most part, really want to see you painting with the big ones so you don't get caught up in those details. Then you'll notice that we have the shadow on the ground at the back, and that comes right about here. And it comes down around that front of the cup. Almost in a little butterfly form. And almost exactly the same thing on the other side. Because this is an exercise, I am not even worrying about painting all the way to the edge of the board, the panel. This is purely an exercise, a visual exercise. So I think it's fine if you want to do this on some scrap canvas, if you've got some gesso canvas hanging around. It's a great thing to use for this. Don't go out and spend $10 on a panel for these exercises. I happen to have some ampersand panels hanging around, and notice that they are not toned, because for these first color exercises we're not going to be toning. I want you to work on a white ground. Just go on and use something that you're not going to think is so precious that you're going to worry about messing it up. This is not something you're going to frame anyway. So I need to bring that shadow around just a little bit more. And then that is the dark of the base. Then I have the section that is pure red, where no light is dulling it out. Well, the shadow's not dulling it out, and the highlight is not bleaching it out, lightening it. So we're going to go to the red next, and the red is right here. And you can see that the contrast in value gives us a strong sense of light. It's just not going to be nearly as strong as what we'll get later when we work with more observed optical color. So remember, this is local color, the physical color of the objects, and then using tints and shades. Now that's blending on me a little bit because I'm pressing down really hard. Doesn't matter, I'm going to go back with some more pure red on top of that after I lay this in. And scrape back a little bit. Where I need to. And lay in some more pure red on top where I want it to cover up. Notice again with the knife you're going to hold it almost flat. Same with the brush if you're working with a brush. If you're working with a brush, I want you to work with the biggest brush you've got so that you're not going to get caught up in making details, because this is not about any detail. It's like a color thumbnail. So whether you're working in acrylics or oils or watercolor, if you're using a brush, get out the big boy. Don't get the little one. Nothing smaller than like a number 8 for oil or water or acrylic. Biggest one you got, that big flat angled one for watercolor. Now for the highlight, the light area comes down here. Actually have a little bit more red right out into here. You just saw what happens if you don't wipe your knife. Don't forget, wipe that knife. So, red. If you need to leave a little white space between those big masses as you're painting them while you're doing the these block-in color studies, do that. I don't want you to worry so much about getting right up on those shapes. These are color block studies. Not blocks like we're painting blocks, but blocking in basic color relationships. So back to that light tint, and it becomes the main color I see down here. So we're almost done here with this bottom part of the painting. Just a little more. And there's a little bit more pure red that kind of goes up in here. Right there. So we're trying to just get those big blocks in. Remember, just like blocking in with black and white. So, except this time we're blocking in with color. almost done with that bottom. Let's just bring a little bit more of the light over there. And a little bit more over here. And then we're going to move to that background, which is the black background. There is very little variation in that. It's a tiny little bit. So we're going to see a very small amount of gray in the background, but not very much. So we can quickly lay it in. I'm going to only take it up to about here. Remember, this exercise is not about composition in the sense that we're not worried about getting the focal point out of the middle or any of those kind of things. We are working simply on identifying and rendering the colors that we see. So sorry if I'm turning this a little awkwardly. It's so that I don't block the camera. I'd probably not turn it this way normally. But let that be a lesson. You can turn the knife in a whole, and the brush in a whole variety of different directions and still retain control. So there we're going up into the top, and like I said, I'm not going to take it up much further than about there. Bring it across. And I'm going to leave some space at the top of that cup for the light part. And yes, I am going to paint it in. I'm not just going to leave it as the white of the board. You could, but I also want you to have that experience of putting some paint into that area without getting too finicky about it. So I'm going to use the smaller knife when I get to that section. Just picked up some gray I don't want. So scrape it off. Let's just blot this all in. Kind of like a coloring book. So think of this as like an adult coloring book exercise. And one of the reasons that I chose the cup again was because it's so similar to things in the landscape as far as the basic shape goes, and also to other still life subjects. So if you're going to paint still life later, it will help. If you're going to paint the landscape, it will help. It will actually help even if you're going to paint the figure. Skin turns so I don't block the camera. And just taking that right on over. Okay, so there we have just the very beginnings of studying local color. Get off this Some of that extra gray there, so it doesn't run into the white area. So scraping back, you know, is one of the keys to not having it all mush up. And then, last but not least, we're going to put some white in this, just to give ourselves value for this top section. Okay, there we have it, our quick study in local color. So we have our 5 to 7 shapes and our 3 to 5 values. Notice that some of them are really similar. So if you squint your eyes, you'll be able to tell that this gray here and this red here are the same value. Then this is the lightest value. This is the next one. Then we go to the grays. Then the dark, this is a value darker than the cup, and then the black of the background. So there we have it. There is our local color study. Our next one is the exact same thing, but moving into more observational optical color. Thank y'all.